Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA plays video for Wednesday, March 9th. There's a pretty nice, I think it's a 9-game slate we have on tap tonight. A couple games that have some decent totals, nothing that really stands out to either side on the top or the bottom. There are some injury news, and there's always going to be some guys who, just wind up sitting last minute. So definitely make sure you monitor the news throughout the day. Remember, we film these videos a little bit before noon time, so we don't have all the information. We try to make these decisions based on the best stuff that we have at the moment. So let's call up our slideshow for today and talk about some of the guys who we are going to be targeting in our GPPs tonight. The first guy up on that list is Kemba Walker at 8,300. And you know what? For all those people who have a problem with the way I say Kemba Walker's last name on Twitter that have been giving me stuff for it, I'm from New Jersey. This is how we talk. Sorry for you. 210-point total in this game. They're going up against the Pelicans. And the Pelicans are a team that plays at a fast pace, and they have bad DVP against point guards anyway. So the matchup sets up pretty well for Kemba here. The backcourt for the Pelicans is banged up too. Eric Gordon's out. We already had Tyreek Evans out. We also have Bryce Deshaun Jones out. So they're basically down to just Tony Douglas, Norris Cole, and Drew Holiday as the only three guys they have left that can play the guard spots for them, basically. Now, Kemba's been really good lately. He's averaged 50.5 fantasy points in his last 4 games, and the range of those games has been between 46 and 53. So he's been consistent, which makes him a good play for cash games, and he's also given you the upside where he's gone, over 6x in some of these games. So he's been a good play for tournaments and a good play for upside lately. And I don't think anyone's going to argue with the guy who's put up, 50, 46, 53, 53 in his last 4 games. He's playing just a tad under 40 minutes a game right now, so he is getting big minutes. The Pelicans do play fast. They're bad against point guards. Kemba's been playing well lately, so there's a lot of things that are pointing to him being a solid play tonight, and I'm definitely going to have some exposure in my tournaments. The next guy I want to talk about is Mario Chalmers. Now, it's not really a great matchup for Chalmers against Boston, although Boston does play up tempo, and they do have a lot of their big men hurt. Sullinger's banged up, Olynyk's still banged up, so there's not a lot of rim protection left on that Boston team. I think Boston's going to have to go small today, which actually works out well because that'll help them match up a little bit with this Grizzlies team. Now, Chalmers is starting right now with Mike Conley out for at least another couple games. And again, whenever you can get a guy that's starting, his minutes are up, his usage is up, his shot attempts are up, all the things that we like for fantasy stats, the assists, the steals, everything has been up with Conley out and Chalmers playing big minutes. Now, he's thrown up 39 fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. So he definitely does have some upside at 5,200. And if you remember earlier in the year, I should say earlier in January, right after the new year, he was consistently above 35 minutes per game and 30 fantasy points per game when Mike Conley was out. So we've already seen what he can do when Conley's not in the lineup. And, the 30-plus fantasy points that he's putting up would be 5.8 to 6x. And the 39 fantasy points that he's putting up would be 7.5x if he's able to repeat those. So with him having a bigger role now that Conley is out, I definitely don't think 5,200 is too much to spend for him. I do think it's a tough matchup for point guards, but again, you're not asking him to go out there and have a 50-point game. You're asking him to go out there and have a 30-point game. And for a guy that's going to see 34 to 40 minutes, I don't think that's asking too much. Now, the next guy we're going to talk about is Andre Drummond at 7,600. It's a 205 total for him against Dallas. Dallas is actually favored by 2 in this game. But lately, Dallas has been a pretty good matchup for big men. Zaza's banged up and is only playing like 15 to 25 minutes. I think he might have even played less than 10 minutes in the last game. And it's been a big reason why they picked up David Lee, and we've seen David Lee playing a lot at center alongside of a guy like Dirk Nowitzki. Now, Drummond has 42-plus fantasy points in 7 of his last 10 games, which is basically 5.5 to 6x value at his price of only 7,600, which is lower than we've seen it in a while. He has flashed 52 or more fantasy points in 3 of those 10 as well. So we have seen the upside that he can give us where he can get us to 7x value at his price of 7,600. That kind of upside with that kind of floor in a good matchup here like Dallas is, it's a high total game. They play pretty fast. And again, they're banged up at the center position. I think there's a lot of things that are pointing to this being a pretty solid game towards the upside for Andre Drummond. Now, the next guy I want to talk about is JaMychal Green. I think people are going to fade this guy and just say, well, he's not going to get that 50-point game that he had last time if, a couple of these Memphis guys that are questionable do wind up playing. And I completely agree with you. But he still faces an up-tempo Boston team. The Celtics are bad at stopping big men, even when they are healthy. And remember, you got Jared Sellinger and Olynyk kind of banged up right now. And the other thing is that the Birdman, Chris Anderson, is out. So, even with Anderson in the last couple games, this is still a guy who's managed to put up 24 fantasy points in 2 of the 3 games before his 50-point outburst. At 4,500, I think he's still cheap and a good matchup against, a Boston team that struggles guarding big men anyway. I think we can get 25 to 30 fantasy points out of JaMychal Green, given the fact that he's probably going to see some extra minutes with Chris Anderson out. He also had a big game, so the coach has a little bit of confidence in him, and Boston is bad at stopping big. So I think there's a lot of things going in his favor, too. At only 4,500, I think he's pretty cheap. He might even wind up getting a start alongside Zach Randolph. Although, like I said, with the Celtics being kind of banged up, they may go small, too. So I don't think he's going to get a huge bump up. I wouldn't even expect 40 fantasy points. But again, if he gets me 27 to 30, I am more than happy with the production that he gives me at a price of only 4,500. So these are 4 guys that I'm looking at right now that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to on my rosters tonight. Again, I try not to pick the guys that are like the most chalk guys that everybody's going to be talking about, but I do pick guys that I think that, you can need and can help you win a tournament. Kemba's ownership has been, kind of depressed pretty much all season with all the other options at point guard. I think it'll be a little bit higher tonight because he has been playing well. So, I don't think you're going to get him incredibly low owned, but I also don't think he's going to be the big chalk. Same thing goes for Andre Drummond. A lot of other centers are around in that position. He's very cheap now, so he's in a really good spot. Chalmers is probably going to be pretty chalky, but again, I don't think you can really fade him. And even JaMychal Green, I think that people are going to be off him. There'll be some people on him after that last game, but I think people are going to be saying, oh, he's not going to repeat that. He can fade it. We can fade him and he's going to have a bad game again. But remember, not all the circumstances are the same. Obviously, if we find out that like Zebo's out as well, then that's going to make him a very chalky play. But even in that case, if Zebo is out and Chris Anderson's out, he's basically the only big guy. So again, at 4,500, he's one of those guys that even though everyone's going to own him, I don't think you really can fade him. So I think that's, probably the way that I'm looking at the slate for tonight. Remember, you got to be around at 6:30 or so. We've had so much crazy news come in the last couple of days, which you really want to try to think about. There's a big difference between the news we got in the Memphis situation and the news we got last night. I know a lot of people were running to roster Patty Mills, who's not really a guy that I like to roster all that much, especially when you saw that Andre Miller was going to be the guy that's starting. But I think what you really want to look at in that situation is the difference is Kawhi Leonard and LaMarcus Aldridge were still playing for the Spurs yesterday. So it wasn't like Patty Mills was going in there with a bunch of scrubs who can't put the ball in the basket. He was still going in there with basically the whole team intact and the, main scorers still being the main scorers. Chalmers the other day when he became the guard, you were playing without basically the entire starting 5 that they had. Gasol was hurt. Zebo was sitting. Barnes was sitting. Everybody there. Connolly sat. They basically weren't playing with any of their starters. So that's a completely different situation where you could expect a lot of guys to step up and have big points. So just keep that in mind. It's not an automatic, well, because this guy's out, I got to automatically start this guy. I made a concerted effort not to play Patty Mills yesterday, and instead I wound up using a guy like David West who was getting extra minutes because Tim Duncan was out. Everybody was talking about Patty Mills, but nobody was talking about David West, who was cheaper and in the same situation. West wound up outscoring Patty Mills yesterday, and I wound up, beating a good 40% of the rosters who made Patty Mills their value play when I used a guy like David West yesterday. So if you can think about other guys that are going to benefit and try to find another way to get something done that isn't the chalk way, it's definitely going to give you a benefit in tournaments. And, it's one of those little things that can help you make some more money. So thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.